You've seen the joke, right? The police comes up to the old farm guy and says, "I've got a warrant to go everywhere," and the guy says, "Well, don't go in that field. And I can go where I like. I'm the police. See, this badge says I can go where I like." Goes in there, bulls chasing him. Help! Help! And the farm guy says, "Show him your badge." Yeah, it's a good joke. Let's go.
Here we go.
Hello. Welcome to the JMAP session at IETF. Leave it open. People will be back. People have run off to grab drinks. There's a few people missing from. As I said before we started, if you're in the room and you're not yet in the data tracker, please log in using either the on-site tool or scanning that QR code over there, or the full tool if you'd like. We are an IETF session. We are under the rules of the note well here. If you don't know it yet, please go in and look at the conditions under which you have agreed to participate here. If we have a look at the next slide as well, we also have the note very well, which is about reasonable behavior and how to work together to get good results without making things miserable for people. So please also read that and follow the behaviors. Thank you. All right, this note and meeting tips, hopefully most of you have already worked out how to get in here, but there are also instructions on how to use Meet Echo. We tend with this smaller group to only invoke the queuing process if we have to, but it is still good to pop into the queue so that people can see who you are and so that you can tell what order you asked, and so remote people don't get left out. All right, we can skip straight past the resources. Everyone's probably got that sorted out. This is the agenda that we have so far. I tacked file node on the end of new work. If we don't get there, we don't get there. That's fine. Would anyone like to do any agenda bashing before we get started? Anything you want to add, remove? No. Fantastic. Then let's get on with the first things. The no, there was also, if you could just hop back to that, there are some things that are currently with the ISG. All right. Yeah. So calendars, contacts, and sharing all with ISG. Is there anything to talk about on them?
So I didn't get in the queue, but no is the short answer. Sharing is in all 48, should be published any day now. I think we've resolved everything. I've got a few comments on calendars to address from ESG review, which I hope to do tomorrow, and then that will go into the editor's queue, and contacts is already in the editor's queue. So I believe they're all basically done.
Great, thank you. All right, yeah, let's go to tasks then.
So, wait, now, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'm Joris Baum from Odriga. My presentation is probably also going to be quite short. It's going to be on the 3 portability drafts and on the task draft. I don't have slide control, right? Maybe I can ask for it.
Yep.
Perfect. I hope not too loud. Last time it was too loud.
Okay. Control.
Good. So, yeah. So first, a small recap on the portability drafts. Why are they even here? So the motivation here is we want to move, or the main goal here is to make it easy for people to move data over a generic API. We think JMAP is a good fit for that. The idea is we give the specification to some providers of either legacy systems or just providers interested in gaining more customers through an easy way of bootstrapping them or helping them move away to other platforms. For this, we have 3 documents. We have a guide, which basically for which the initial idea was we have a bare minimum version of JMAP, as JMAP is quite a powerful protocol, and it should be in the perfect world. It should be even so easy that it's usable for one-time migration scenarios. So we have a low entry barrier. Then there is a REST document which turns JMAP into a REST API to even lower the entry barrier for some scenarios. And there are also some extensions that we propose. So we have specific solutions for migration-specific problems that are not yet in the normal JMAP specs available. So that's just a small recap. Yeah, sadly, we didn't come around to have to work in a lot of progress on the specs. One change is there is one change that we did to the JMAP Essential spec, which is the guide that I was talking about. In the meantime, this guide has grown from having this bare minimum migration use case to just showing people that are interested in JMAP what parts could be implemented first if they want to give it a try, just to have a very first initial version. And there are a bunch of use cases in the document for people that are interested in JMAP. Yeah, so I changed the definition of those use cases to make that a bit clearer. And yeah, well, last IETF, we actually said it would be a good idea to have this ready before this IETF, which did not happen. I think the document should be ready in about 4 weeks' time, and then we could start a working group last call if nobody in the room objects. There is Hans-Jörg.
Yeah, coming up.
Hi, this is Hans-Jörg, also from Odriga. There's actually one thing that came up when looking back at that, and we had a recent discussion, I think at the London event, and I don't recall exactly for which case that was, in which also there is a minimum JMAP implementation where you would need a session. I'm not sure if it was a JMAP access or something in the OAuth context. So maybe somebody recalls what it was, and I wonder if it makes sense to at least cross-check shortly if that is worth mentioning here or could help people with it, because this is also to describe this bare minimum on to do other JMAP things later on. So to see if what we get here or recommend here for a session object would also work in whatever that case was.
I'm confused. Is this on the mailing list?
No,
Can we get it on the mailing list?
Yeah, we can also do it on the mailing list. I just wanted to check if it rang a bell directly with somebody. Okay.
no.
Yeah, I mean, if you could raise that topic on the mailing list, it'd be helpful. Like for me, I'm completely lost.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. So I see no further people in the queue. So yeah, that's the status here. Yeah. So the other 3 drafts have a to-do list. By some people left comments on the list. Some to-dos are coming from us internally. We need to do some more changes. Is the TLDR on those specs? Yeah. That's basically it. Any more questions?
I wanted to ask regarding tasks. What are you waiting on for that? Is that waiting on things from Calex, or is that waiting on other work?
Well, last IETF, we asked around for other task vendors to get more feedback. This is still something that we have not yet gotten. I mean, and there are also a bunch of things on our to-do list. It's out of all those. I mean, the migration, the guide, the first one has progressed quite a lot. And I would say the draft that has progressed the second most is the tasks draft. Yeah, I mean, if Hansjörg has also some input here, last time it was, him who proposed to wait for some feedback.
Yep. So that's Hansjörg again. Yeah, I think it's essentially what Joris said. So I think we discovered, or we pointed out in the beginning of the draft, that I think one major distinction between the tasks topic and the calendar topic is that tasks are more diverse in the world outside. And we by ourselves had the use case that we also looked at something like issue tracking systems and stuff that is very close to this. And we actually found that from the model we tried to incorporate it, and it seemed to make sense. However, these kind of communities don't follow so in detail this kind of discussion here, which I think if we want to achieve also some adoption in these communities, it makes sense to get some feedback from them as well before we finalize it. So that's basically where it stuck a little bit, because it requires some work to reach out to certain communities and to ask them if that is something that's worthwhile for them as well, because to my knowledge, there is no portability data format and mechanism so far for most of these systems. Beyond probably some CSV files. So I think this is also, that could be some useful stuff to get it interoperable with all kind of tasks. So,
yeah. All right, what's the pathway forwards for that work?
So essentially, we even have drafted for a kind of a questionnaire or email we want to send out. So it's basically just work we have to do to collect some more addresses or contacts. So also, if you know somebody or vendors, or if there are vendors here probably that also do task stuff which goes beyond mere contact calendar task, get in touch, or also tell me to whom we can reach out. That would be super helpful, I think.
Cool. If you want to send a post to the mailing list asking for that as well, I guess.
We will do that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and since you mentioned Calext, this spec adds a bunch of new properties to the JS calendar object that may be seen as more than just API nuances on top of what's already there. But I think it's likely not worth to do that in a separate working group and a separate document, but would be open also for phasing things out here if that is required or if that is liked by some people.
I guess that might be something to bring up when the tasks document comes up in Calext.
Okay, good. That was it from me.
All right. The actions I've collected so far are that you will publish a new version of Essential. Any other actions you want to add to the minutes from this meeting?
Well, hopefully publish another version of the other 3 specs as well.
Cool. No, push extension. That's all we've got, isn't it? All right, Neil.
Okay. Your trademark draft coming soon. Wow.
Hello. Yes, this is an extension I'm proposing, which is to help particularly mobile clients that want to integrate with push. So we have obviously quite a comprehensive push system in JMAP at the moment, but you can only opt to receive a push when any message is delivered or when there's any change at all in email. And on iOS in particular, but possibly Android too, they really only want you to wake up the device when you want to show the user a notification, which may only be a subset of those. And apps can get penalized if they don't start showing notifications whenever they get a push. So one of the key things this is meant to add, if we go to the next slide, I think I put this in, is that we'll only send push messages where the device will show a notification. And the way that will work is that when you register for pushes, you'll be able to pass the server a filter, the same format we use for email query, and just say, only send a push if it matches this filter. And so because of the way the JMAP filter works, you can be pretty much as arbitrarily precise as you want for that. So that should be quite nice. And then the second thing is not quite as important, but still a nice optimization in that it's nice when you receive that not to have to make another HTTP request in order to show the notification to the user, especially because push notifications can get through sometimes when you still have pretty crappy connections and that thing may fail. And so the second thing you'd be able to do with this, if you go to the next slide, please, is to ask for certain properties to come through with the push request. And this again will be kind of the same format as we use for email get in JMAP. And so probably just ask like the from and the subject, and that means that the push notification would have everything you need to show a notification to the user. Obviously, you can fetch the IDs and stuff as well along with it. And that's basically the whole thing. I'll have to write that up how it actually fits in protocol-wise, but I don't think it's going to be too complicated. And this, I think, is a lot of what people are looking to do with the push as well, we found. And so I think that will make it a lot easier for them because they don't have to make other requests. And yeah, as I said, they can be more precise. So that's the concept. I will write that up, I promise, before the next IETF and send it to the list. Any questions? I take that rounding silence to mean everyone fully agrees and thinks we should have done this yesterday. Great.
All right. So the action I put is Neil to publish doc, then Bron call for adoption.
Yep.
I'm going to be asking Jim to do a call for adoption for another thing in a second. So
cool.
I figure we should share the pain. We did have an item in the agenda for account discovery, authentication and account discovery. Is that what was spoken about in Mailmate? Okay, so it probably didn't belong here at all. Well, I guess we're on to file node then. Hey, I'm just going to sit here if that's okay. Next slide, please. So this is basically what FastMail uses for file storage with a little bit of renaming, a little bit of fiddling around with things. I sent a draft on Sunday. I'm sure you've all read it. As we discovered in the last session, nobody ever makes any comments without having read the drafts. So we're good there. One question I did have was whether we should support symlinks. There is an RFC for doing symlinks in WebDAV. There's a question of whether we need to have some way to include parents. I think we do, but how we do that in terms of fetching nodes. Basically, this is a tree of nodes, and the node is either a collection or a resource in WebDAV terms. Collection being a directory or a folder to everyone else, and a resource being a file. They each have a node ID. A node has a parent. If it's a directory, if it's not a directory, it probably shouldn't be a parent for anything. And you work all the way up to the top of the tree, which has no parent. Question of what we want to add to capabilities. There's a question of do we need to store per client metadata? I had a look at all the stuff that's stored in FastMail file storage, and it looked like basically everything could be done without needing to store per client metadata, other than the things that we do internally within FastMail. We've got a namespace that we put all our own rubbish in for our file system, but in terms of what WebDAV clients are using, nothing seems to be using many live properties other than the few standard ones that weren't well defined, and so everyone went and re-implemented them. I've got some slides about that. Do we allow changing the content of a node or not? This is, I guess, a question of where you want things to be able to be flexible and where you don't. You could just say a node with different content gets the same name but a new node ID, or you could say that you can change the content of an existing node. My preference is that you just give it a new ID if it's got new content, the same way that email works. But I think that's probably something we could discuss the pros and cons of if people want to. Obviously, it needs real world testing on something more than just me hitting it with a few test cases. I'd like to see what is necessary for the things that are out there. I do know what WebDAV supports because I wrote Fastmail's DAV server many years ago, and it certainly covers everything that you can do with DAV now. If we could look at the next slide, I've got some bits of data in there.
Neil, did you want a clarification on this?
Yeah. All right, let's just keep rolling for a little bit so you can see what's in there. So this is the full list of DAV properties that were not Fastmail specific ones on the Fastmail server. The bold bit at the top is the namespace, and then the property name is in there. You can see basically it's all last modified, created time, modified time. There's also the last access time, Win32 supports there. I changed the text around that to say it's set by the client. You can choose whether to set it or not. There are cases where it's useful to know when something was accessed, if it's rarely accessed. So I think we should provide it in the protocol, and just put something in the implementation considerations saying it's recommended if you're mounting this as a file system to lazily update it or not update it. Yeah, it's just it's a metadata field. It's not expensive. All right. Yeah, there are lots of things from Neon Litmus, but that is a WebDAV tester that does a whole heap of clever stuff that we don't need to support in this protocol. All right, next slide. Win32 file attributes. These were all the values. I don't know what they all mean, but clearly it's got the counts of how often each of these different arrangements were there. I suspect these are basically my rights and executable, but I don't know that.
So we need to support 20, but 31 is out.
Yeah, basically. Anyway, whatever. Next. When I had a look at these fields, the SMBR backup things, and the last modified underscore server. Last modified underscore server is used for synchronization. I actually read the specs on that one. The client uses it to know whether the server end has changed as well, but we can tell by blob ID if the content's changed if you don't allow blob IDs to be changed on an ID. And so you'll be able to tell that a node has forked from that, and you can tell from the modification timestamp or whatever other magic you want to use which one you care about. This SMBR one, it had two types of backups, calls or SMS, and a UUID that related them to each other, a backup date and count of how many records were in there. I don't know that we really need to support a case like this. They could encode things in the file name or whatever. The final slide in here was just some samples of what the file names that this thing created were. Yeah. So it's just got a calls and a timestamp.xml. You could easily do something with directories or similar if you wanted to make this work differently. Yeah, and I think there's only one more slide, which is, does it look reasonable? Should we do a call for adoption on this? And I know that there's work to do before we publish it, but do we want to work on this now? Do we want to delay it? I guess are the main questions. So Neil, you're in the queue, and then there's I think some other people too.
Hello, it's Neil. I had comments going back. I'll start actually at the end and go back. Do we want to do this now? Maybe. Is there, if people are actually looking to work on it right now? I'm not entirely convinced. I think eventually, yeah. Going backwards, I think, yeah, it's important that we obviously support things that, WebDAV, but I think there's no way we can make this encompass every feature that's in like Dropbox and Google Drive and stuff. It would just become this unwieldy thing. People can, ideally, they would be able to support this if they wanted to, but then they'd probably have their own custom extensions for all the other stuff they do if they wanted to have that on the top. And that's fine. That works well with JMAP. Regarding the blob ID thing in whether you can change it for the same file node, I'd be interested to know what can you do with file systems normally with that, because I don't really know. Can you do that? And my second thought on that was if you could do that, that is quite nice in terms of then being able to get revision numbers for that file node and be able to then perhaps keep track of revisions on the server, which could be an optional extension. Anyway, just some random thoughts.
Yeah. The way the fastmail one works is you do it by name, by file name, rather than by node number for the undo history. But yeah, I could see that allowing you to change the blob ID and then have a history of the blob IDs that the nodes had over time as an extension. That seems reasonable. I'm happy with that. The other question was, there's a couple of calculated properties that are very useful to have on nodes, but you basically have to walk the ancestor tree to do them. One is full path, and the other one is calculated my rights on this node. There's no nice way in JMAP to say this is a calculated property. If any of the parents change, then you need to recalculate it.
So I mean, not other than in the spec, because we have that like in calendars. It's not based on our parents, but like UTC and UTC start calculated properties. So you could have that, and you'd say these are not covered by /changes, for example. You don't get change notification from them. But if you want to fetch them, the server will do it. It may be slow or something like that.
All right, good. Then I will specify them like that and say you have to refetch them if anything's changed and you're unsure.
Yeah, it's not in changes. And the other thing is they wouldn't be in the default set. You'd have to explicitly ask for them, I would recommend.
Yep. Cool. Ben.
Hi, this is Ben. So the node contains the file name, the metadata, etc., right?
Mm-hmm.
So then it doesn't very much make sense to replace the blob. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to delete every file and recreate it, which means I'm losing all the properties. I'm losing the last creation file. You saw that in your example. There were many examples which are keeping track of file creation, modify time, and you lose all of that if you delete and rewrite every time you write something, right?
That's the point. The creation time. If you rewrite the content, I mean, you could set it to the value that was on the previous one as well. But yep.
All right.
Yep.
So this is Hans-Jörg, migration and data portability enthusiast. I think this is very worthwhile doing it because we are already using it. So we have sort of a client and a server probably quite overlapping with this, because when we did that in a project some 2 years ago, I think we oriented ourselves a little bit on the Fastmail API.
Yep.
So I have to look a little bit into the details, what probably changed in the meantime, but I think we could easily adopt it to that probably. Not having looked in detail in the draft yet, I think one of the things to note that would be interesting for us is the ability to set the modified time even of the server, because this is a common problem in migration. Hashes would be an interesting thing to address to a certain extent. So which kind of hashes are supported by the server for the files? Because this is also a hassle right now to see, if you correctly transferred files from a source to a destination, because everybody uses different kinds of hashes. Sometimes you don't even get them. And this is very tedious.
So that's actually covered by JMAP Blob.
Okay, cool.
Which already has digest support.
Yeah, okay. I need to look into detail, because sometimes it's also about the practicability, because if you have to have another call for that after you upload it and so on. Anyway, one minor thing is probably something like special use folders. So sometimes you have something like trash folders and these kind of things, photo folders or something like that, quite similar to the draft inboxing and email. So probably it might make sense to do that right from the start here. And another minor thing, which I'm not sure needs to be strictly in it, but one might think about it, is this share link kind of thing. So not actually ACLs, but many of the online storages nowadays, probably even Fastmail, have this kind of thing. share a dedicated file or folder with a user.
Mhm.
And this is really something tricky to migrate, even impossible to a certain extent, the way it is designed right now. So one might even need to think about a little bit more here. But it's actually blocking people from migrating sometimes. Yeah, but sure. But you might think about a way to, I don't know, collect all that. One problem is there is no protocol for that right now without triggering that email.
Mhm.
But if you would be able to set these things, you could at least, for the users affected, provide a way to send them a bulk mail, maybe with those links or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't have a solution here, but I just
Or get a giant redirect table.
right. I don't have a full solution, but I just wanna mention the point. Maybe somebody else also thinks it's worth it. Thanks.
Yeah, all right. Special use folders is interesting. That actually raises one thing that I came up with while I was writing this document, is I have the fields blob ID, type, and size. And all three of these say if the type's a collection, they must be null. If the type's not a collection, they must not be null. And it feels remarkably like this should be a sub-object that is only set for files and has required keys, because then you can't represent the document incorrectly.
Blob ID and size have to be tied together because it's the size of the
Yeah,
blob ID.
but it's
so-
just a question
and
of
the
do
type.
you make this
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
sub-object of file
Potentially.
info,
Yeah.
and then a yeah.
Can I take the mic for a second?
Yeah, sure.
So in conjunction with my sort of determining adoption thing, I've launched a poll here to include the people that are remote about what the interest is, how many people are interested in, should be working on, or not. The no's don't matter, but mostly the idea here is to make sure that we have sufficient interest in the working group to adopt this. So this I'll be confirming this on the mailing list, of course, but I just kind of wanted to get a sense of the room here. And we've got several, so that's excellent. Yeah, that's. Okay, great. Well, thanks. We've got several that are interested, and that's the important part of it. I'll take no opinion as kind of a no.
All right. In my copious free time, I'm planning to build at least one client implementation for one operating system. It might be Fuse for Linux. We'll see. And one for a real operating system too. All right. Now I'd like to build a WebDAV proxy in front of it as well, so you can WebDAV to it. All right. And replace Fastmail's current direct access WebDAV with something that speaks this.
Just make sure you saw Doris's comments here in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you. I agree with all these things. Okay. I believe we are now at any other business. Does anyone have any other business for our remaining 27 minutes? I guess let's pull up the list then of our milestones.
Should we ask about an interoperability event? If there's, I'm not sure it's really an IETF.
Yeah, I don't think we're right for that yet. Okay. If you could unshare those slides.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
All right, welcome to Infinite Loop. All right. Hey, it's not that hard. I mean, easy. Web push vapid. That we didn't talk about here because it's basically ready to go. But I did ask on the list for anyone if they had any last comments before I submit the thing. Nobody did. Does anybody want to say anything against sending that off for Murray to do the next steps on right now? Excellent. Then that is going to happen in November. Sweet. Adopt a document for JMAP archive format. This has not been proposed yet. When do we want to look at that? You got lots of things in the queue. Yep, hop up to the microphone. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So I think so. It's okay. For adoption, we need an initial draft, right? Or what is the minimum requirement for that?
Give us a draft first.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at Alexei, I think I don't know. For next IETF, certainly we should have a very first version of that.
March.
That's even okay. It's fine.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well adopted in March.
All right.
If we get ahead of our milestones once, that'd be nice. Portability guide was supposed to happen now. Portability guide. When do we think?
Murray's pushing for April, I think.
No. Adoption in March is fine.
Yeah. Yep. December. Sweet. Yeah, 4 weeks, wasn't it? That's 4 weeks from now, December. We don't hear you if you.
Yeah, no. Yeah, sorry, I didn't unmute.
Yep.
Yes, 4 weeks.
Cool. All right. Portability extensions.
Yeah, that will take a bit longer. Maybe, March, April. I heard April somewhere, but.
Okay. April. SMIME sender extensions. Alexei. Which year? It says February at the moment, 2025. I can promise that. JMAP tasks. That's probably going to be later than, say, July.
Okay.
I mean, you don't have to agree with me.
Okay.
There's no law.
Still, I agree. I'm sorry.
Yep. And REST, you think before then?
Before a bit, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
April.
Put that to April as well. Add the file storage draft for December. I've got too many drafts here. JMAP file node. Did we have anything else that came up here? Oh yeah, Neil's thing, wasn't it? Adopt a draft for push filtering. And there's no draft for that yet, yeah? Okay. December as well, January. All right. Awesome. Is that everything? I'm not seeing anyone jumping up and saying otherwise. So we're saying we're changing and we've got 2 more adopt a drafts. Sweet. All right, enjoy your 20 minutes, everybody. Thanks for coming. It was easy. All right. Have I been doing a good job of playing Barry?
Oh, with the hat?
The hat.